Hello, Art.
Andrew, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Happy Amazon Prime Day.
Exactly. Yeah. What are the purchases that you've made already?
So I was up at midnight, um, and that wasn't the plan. I was watching some TV, and um, and then I realised that the Prime sales start at midnight. So I thought, you know what, let me just stay up another 20 minutes. Um, and it actually, I mean, like obviously we get maybe the toned down version of Amazon, right? We don't get the
Yeah.
glorious goods on offer
US one.
like we
No, that's
do
right. Yeah.
like we do in the States. But yeah, a little TV soundbar for my little outdoor TV and a few other little bits and pieces. I think nothing too
Nice.
exciting, but still exciting.
I thought
Yeah.
you'd be getting the drone, the Ring drone. You've seen that, right?
I have seen that. It looks phenomenal. It's not launched though, right?
No, no. But I thought
No.
you might try and get on there and try and quickly get
Yeah,
something. So yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
was expecting that. I mean, that's phenomenal. For those of you who don't know, that Ring have launched a drone that basically kind of patrols your house for you. So from a security system, which is just blows me away. Anyway, yeah. What a happy Prime Day, and welcome to the Growth Show. So for those of you that are new, I can see a few people popping in now. Hi, welcome to the show. This is our weekly catch up. We're now on, I guess, episode 23, right? 23,
Yep.
which is quite scary. For those of you, and I can see obviously a few guys that join us every week. Thank you for returning. And we should give a shout out to the podcast listeners as well, because for whatever reason that traffic has shot through the roof. So thank you to everyone that's listening to the show as well. I guess our show works well from a podcast perspective because we don't really have a deck, right? We don't have a presentation, or it's not death by PowerPoint, so it's good,
This is
easy
true.
listening. Yeah,
And they don't have to
so,
see our faces, mate.
exactly. This is even better. Yeah. I'm not broadcasting from Nextred HQ today. I'm actually decided to do a fireside chat today. I feel like I'm just missing a fire. I do
Yeah.
have a beard and obviously pipe and slippers on while I'm sitting here talking to you.
No, it does. It does suit you. It does suit you. So yeah. Okay, cool. So yep, some more people dropping through. Okay, cool. So I'll tell you what, mate. I think just while people are jumping in,
Yeah.
I just read the funniest news story this week, and I don't know whether it's kind of just a bit of a testament to how many of us are feeling at the moment. But have you seen what Singapore Airlines have launched last week?
Home delivery,
No,
airline
even
food. They launched that.
they launched airline food, but not home delivery. It's basically you've got to book a seat on the plane
Oh yeah,
on an
you
A
can.
on an A380, and so your economy seat is about $50 a seat.
Right.
And all you do is you go on there, they feed you with a normal kind of tray. Um, and if you want to go for business and first and then the suite, it goes up to about 500, £500, $500, I think. So
Right.
$500 per seat. Plane doesn't take off.
Excellent.
But they've been sold out. They've sold out two A380s over the weekend, and
Wow.
they've now got a waiting list.
Wow.
And
Genius.
it's nuts. I mean, it really is genius in
Yeah.
some respects, but I do miss traveling. I know,
Not
I
that
know, like,
much, surely.
but not that much. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
point, right? I mean, I'm not gonna book a seat on
Yeah.
there on a Singapore Airlines or an Emirates Airlines flight just for a meal. I mean, that
No.
kind of that does take it to extremes. But
No,
yeah,
I mean,
really interesting.
I guess they've always led the way. I mean, they basically launched a home delivery service last week as well. So they were
Okay.
saying that, and the whole premise was that, we're used to delivering high quality, good quality food at, 30,000 feet in the air, rehydrated, reheated to taste fresh. So we took that kind of technology and learning and basically now we're offering it to the public.
Yeah.
So you can now order home food and like decent food as well, but obviously all prepackaged and in a microwave and good to go. So yeah, I thought that's what was the story, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah. No, it's nuts.
Why are we
But yeah,
seeing more
cool.
Singapore stories, by the way? I'm being targeted by a lot of Singapore stories at the moment. I don't know if you are in my news feeds. So
I no, I'm not.
something's
I'm
going
not.
on.
No, this one just literally just popped in on its own.
Fair enough.
Cool.
Good stuff. Well, I mean, that brings us to today's topic, right? We launched last week. We started the 2021 series. So last week we had, how does marketing look like or what does marketing look like in 2021? What are some of the considerations? And obviously, this is the second part of that 4-part series. And today we're talking sales, right?
Yeah, and I think it just, which we had a really good response from last week's show.
Yeah.
Both from the podcast and from those who joined the show as well. So hopefully, I think we've got a lot more kind of value to add from a kind of sales perspective today. It's going to be really interesting. I feel like the reality is we're joking about sort of people, I don't know, missing flying and all that kind of stuff, but we're back to where we were numbers wise, pretty much around the world from where we were, say, 4 months ago.
Exactly.
And that's not a good sign, right? So if we're looking at, obviously in a lot of places now, the winter months, which seemingly had an impact earlier this year, sorry. We're almost feels like we're in some sort of crazy cycle where, we're going to be impacted, for the kind of foreseeable future, and that, I think certainly includes most of 2021.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously. There's the points that we wanted to run through were, based on where we are now, what we were doing before, and then hopefully, how we can kind of improve things from a sales perspective moving into 2021. So as always, guys, if you have any questions, jump it on the Q&A or jump it on the chat. Happy to do that. And I think if you're listening, or if you're watching this at a later date, by all means, drop us an email. So you can drop us an email at growthshow@digitalnexa.com. So if you've got any questions or anything that you want to kind of fire our way, just send that over, and we'll be happy to answer any questions as well afterwards.
Awesome, cool. So let's get cracking, Andrew. So I mean, our there's a few people who may have heard this before, but our journey together started because of sales, I guess, right?
Yeah, totally.
Many moons ago.
Sales. Many moons ago, yeah. It was based around sales. We've told the story before, but a guy rocked up at my office, and he was basically selling mobile solutions, and I asked him which crazy guy sent you out into the marketplace selling mobile solutions when no one knows what mobile is. So
pre iPhone.
Pre iPhone. Oh, this was Nokia days. This was Sony Ericsson days. So yeah, that was that. And I was like, whoever sent you out, I need to meet that man, because he's either very cruel or just a genius in the making. Turns out you were that man. Yeah, you were very cool.
That's a cool guy.
Turns out you were that forward-thinking gentleman that needed to have a mobile conversation probably 6 years before anyone else. And yeah, that kind of got us talking, and several, I guess, beers, salads, fried chicken later. Most of those conversations always revolved around sales, because we were both, obviously at the time, you owned. We still do, not at the time, but at the time you were the owner of Nexa and still are, and obviously I was working in Yellow Pages back in those days. So both responsible for sales, different dynamics, but very much that was a huge focus because we were both commercially active, right? Out there, and had been for many years, and I guess still are, right? So we're still, nothing's changed as far as how commercially active we are. We're still out there pounding the streets, so I think we still can offer some valuable insights.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's funny, we talk back, and I don't know how many years ago that was now, maybe 13, 14 years ago, I guess.
13, something like that, yeah.
It's funny, right? I mean, because how much has really sales evolved and sales processes evolved during that time, right? If you look at everything that's around us, everything from a technology standpoint, what's really kind of changed, since those days when we used to, and in all fairness, we used to sit there we used to sit there moaning about salespeople, right? It was a reality because we never, we just, I don't know, what it was, there was always frustration, right? It was like, that's always the main topic. It was,
Yeah, I mean, I think it was also, what do we do? Do we have a large sales force and pound the streets? Is it about numbers? And I mean, physical individuals out there pounding the streets. Is it about targeting? So should some of my sales force focus on one of my products or service, or should they
Yeah,
offer everything? Should I pay a huge base and little commission? Should I do no base, all commission? Should I do a hybrid? Should I give the guys parking cards? Should I? There was a whole always a kind of back and forth as far as what tech you're using, how are you tracking performance, how are you tracking commissions. There was always a discussion, an evolving discussion around something that is ultimately so crucial to the business, because obviously without
yeah,
sales we don't have a business, right? Simple as
yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, exactly, but again, it goes back to that point. What's really changed? Because
Mm.
you're out there. We're both out there speaking to a ton of clients. We're trying to help them sort of get prepared for 2021.
Yeah,
And actually, it's been great because it gives us an opportunity to really ask some questions where we perhaps haven't even asked some of these questions for a while. But I think with what's going on, I think it gives us an opportunity to really kind of ask some deep questions, to the companies that we speak to, really about kind of things like sales processes, and really
yeah,
kind of get quite granular with that. Look, from where I sit and the conversations I've had, I still find it really kind of amazing that some of the same things that we were moaning about 13 years ago are still the same things that
yeah,
company owners moan about today, or heads of
yeah, yeah.
sales moan about today. And so it kind of makes me wonder, because again, marketing is a different animal today than what it was 13 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, you know,
definitely. Yeah, we've spoken about it in the past where marketing has kind of taken that leap, and I guess it's they've enjoyed the spoils of tech, or they've enjoyed the spoils of growth, and it's sort of kind of very kind of out there, right? Very popular. Whereas sales, you don't really go to university to kind of become commercially active. Let's say you don't go to university to study sales, right? There's some sales training courses, and obviously
sure.
there's institutes that are associated to sales training. But whereas marketing and digital marketing and inbound marketing, there's a whole host of educational resources associated to being that. It's a career move, right? But you don't necessarily see people say, look, I want to sell, right? That's what I want to do.
Mm.
And if they do, it's more of a kind of personality driven, I guess, activity versus technology or interest or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the point is despite all of that, and you're right, nobody kind of wakes up in the morning and says, right, at a young age. I mean, ask my kids what they want to be in the future, and they'll tell you 1,000 things, but being a salesperson isn't one of them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's something that people kind of find themselves in, but what's weird is, again, and it's perhaps because they're being trained, maybe not from an academic perspective, but it's kind of training on the job. Perhaps there's
yeah,
a senior person who's training them. Maybe it's reasons like that where essentially people are told, this is how you sell. This is how we've
yeah,
always sold. This is what
exactly.
works and this is what doesn't work. So don't go and try something that doesn't work, right? And especially
Yeah,
with sales being such a kind of numbers and results um, based job, right? If you don't
yeah,
sell and you don't generate revenue, then
done.
you don't typically have a job. Nobody
That's right.
kind of keeps salespeople because they try hard. So although we have in the past, but
Literally.
but the point is that's not kind of how it works, right? And
No, exactly.
but the technology is there, and I think it's kind of it's wrong to say, okay, sales hasn't moved on. I think what's not moved on perhaps is maybe people and sales processes haven't moved on, but
Yeah,
but technology has. I mean, the amount of sales technology and technology that kind of really supports sales is huge, and I think we'll touch on that in the show today
yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think some of the things that I have seen kind of change, or you start to see, grassroots or green shoots, is the kind of more to a consultative sell. So instead of kind of just putting out your pitch and just kind of aiming down the line and kind of shouting at people and not really listening, I think there's definitely a maturity now to understand that actually no, I do need to understand a bit more about my potential prospect and where that individual may be. But I think obviously, you know, what hasn't really changed either is like the relationship. So that kind of relationship, people buy from people who they like, that's still relevant. But I think obviously, you know, we found ourselves distanced socially over the last 8 months, and that obviously has an impact on that individual that is very relationship driven, let's say, and relies on that to perhaps, you know, mask over other you know, areas that they haven't really focused on, right? For their kind of selling career. So it's there. Yeah.
Cool. So look, shall we? I think we should just kind of move forward, and I think we've got, and you know, we've obviously had discussion about this prior to the show today, but you know, I think we're both pretty clear in terms of what people need to do in 2021, or looking forward to 2021 in terms of sales. How do you want to do this, Andrew? I mean, should we kind of, I don't know, any ideas?
Let's do this.
Is that a slow hand clap?
Let's say a super hand, slow hand clap. I guess you know, we talk about a funnel a lot. You know, and obviously when the HubSpot speak, we move it to flywheel. But I think we've got to go with what everyone knows, and you know, that sales funnel. I think if we take people through that, then that kind of you know, sets them up nicely as far as how they may want to, you know, take away from today and implement this in their own environment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. So linear, kind of top to bottom.
Yeah.
Go through pro. Okay, cool. I like that. All right, perfect. So start at the top of the funnel.
Yep.
All right.
Is that you saying you start at the top of the funnel, or is that me?
So look, that's probably more my area. So I'm happy to start at the top of the funnel.
You go for that. You
okay.
pick off
All right.
that.
Okay, cool. So for me, at the very, very top of the funnel is you know, aside from kind of internal knowing products and all that kind of stuff. When we took high level funnel, I think let's talk about kind of the strategy. Okay. So, and we're not talking specifically sales strategy. I think we're talking a combination of sales and marketing strategy. And when we're talking about sort of sales and marketing strategy, we need to talk about sales and marketing alignment. And I think one of the biggest challenges I still see, I saw it earlier this week, I saw it last week, and these are companies where they understand they need to have a new process. They need to kind of refine what they're doing from a sales perspective, moving into, you know, this kind of new normal. But they still say, you know, they still have a setup where, you know, marketing is maybe on that side of the room, or even on that side of the world in some cases, and sales is, you know, over there somewhere. And I think that sales and marketing kind of, you know, I don't know, unalignment, whatever it's called, right, is a mess. Because basically, I think I just made that up. But basically, what it is, you know, we're in a very different world, and today, sales and marketing has to be one very kind of integrated department. Okay, and the reason I kind of say that is where it's kind of disjointed. It just doesn't work. And I was on a call earlier this week, and it's a new client that's been picked up in the States, a big billion-dollar company, and the calls with their kind of entire marketing team, and it was really interesting. So they were like, look, the focus of this engagement is we're going to generate leads. We want to kind of, you know, this is what we'll do. We want to create it for this sector. And I said, cool, what sector? And they're like, it's the healthcare and finance sectors. Great. And then, you know, they were saying, yeah, this is kind of really important. I was going, great. So have sales told you how important this is, or is this marketing? And they were like, well, no, it's kind of us. I was like, okay, cool. Have sales kind of given you any, you know, have been involved in this process where you've been coming up with these ideas? And again, it was no. And I was like, okay, cool. What about the messaging? Right, what messaging are you going to market with? Because, you know, you guys have got 300 salespeople that are out there. Yeah. What insights have you taken from those salespeople who are possibly having 3, 4, 5, 6 sales calls per day? Okay.
Exactly.
They're collecting, you know, a whole ton of knowledge and information.
Yeah.
They know what questions their prospects are asking them, and are we answering any of those questions that are being asked there right now? Okay, in real time,
out in the market.
Yeah. Are we answering any of those with the content and the collateral that you guys have put together from a marketing standpoint? And the answer is no. Which is, and that still happens, right? And that's in the States,
Shocking.
that happens in the UAE, happens, I mean, everywhere. And I get it, right? Because, marketing have got their own KPIs, and typically those aren't related to sales. Sales have got their KPIs and they're not typically related to marketing.
Yeah.
And so that, but it's disjointed, and I think that's the issue. So from my perspective, when we look at, overall strategy, I think first and foremost, step number one is get marketing and sales in a room and get them to have a very real conversation, right? So, marketing's role, I think, in 2021, especially in that B2B space, is how do we help sales sell more, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's how do we generate more leads. I think it's how do we get salespeople to sell more. And I think that's, they sound very similar in terms of,
big
what I'm trying to say, but it actually is a difference there.
Yeah. Huge difference,
and if they're not supporting that sales process, then I think you have a big challenge. Yeah. And I think it'd be interesting to get your take on this, because I mean, you've run kind of large sales organizations before, and I think, kind of understanding sales processes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know, what's your kind of thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it truly is a wasted opportunity not to dive into that sales knowledge, right? I think especially at the moment, the prospect or buyer mentality has shifted, right? So even perhaps the conversations, the questions that were being asked a year ago are not the same questions that are being asked now. And if you still kind of go to market with that strategy that is again very disjointed, you're missing a trick, because you're ultimately firing blanks at that point, right? You just don't really know where who you're talking to, if they're going to understand your message, is the message going to resonate with them, as you said. So I think that's a missed trick or missed opportunity for sure, to kind of pull in that sales knowledge. I think from a process perspective as well, that if you go back and look at that traditional sales space, where it was, kind of marketing, generating those leads, throwing them into effectively like a boiler room, right? If we go back to boiler room, people on phones, kind of going through the process, the sales manager or sales director kind of keeping eyes on, seeing what's going on. I mean, that's non-existent now. We can't. I guess in most countries at the moment, it's a legal requirement for that not to happen. That boiler room and ringing the bell and that just doesn't exist anymore, because obviously through social distancing, or perhaps organizations that have made the decision never to go back to the office. We heard from Microsoft this last week that that's it. You guys, you don't want to come back to the office, you don't have to. Simple as that. We'll work through a hybrid or whatever. So I think just some of that from a strategy and process perspective, that needs to be looked at as well. And I think that possibly in the past, where there may have been a reluctance for sales to engage with marketing, I think they now need each other more than ever, right? They need to make sure that they're feeding each other information, because ultimately, as you said, that is what is going to deliver business, not just leads, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think there's one more part of this, because we've set this up in the past, and we've spoken to companies and said that you need to get some alignment, and they said we agree, and so they get everyone in a room and they have this big meeting, and sales say, look, this is what we're hearing in the market. Market is saying this is how we can solve some of those questions or those problems that you're facing, and it all works great. And then 3 or 4 months later, we go back in saying, great, guys, how's it going? And they're like, oh, well, I'm not really sure how. I'm not really sure if marketing are doing too much now. And marketing are like, actually, I don't know what's happened to the leads that we've generated or the content we've created. And so I think, for the kind of missing point here, just in this side and the marketing and sort of sales alignment piece, is you need the technology that bridges both of that together. And and again, we've spoken, plenty of times about, the importance of a CRM. But the reason that's important, not just from an individual level, as individual salesperson's perspective of keeping track of what's going on, on a day-to-day basis, what's keeping track of their kind of leads and their prospects and their conversations. It's not just about that. But the fact is that if a salesperson is fully on top of the CRM, marketing can see exactly what's going on from a sales perspective. So they've now got eyes on potentially, leads that they've generated. So they can get some feedback. If they're tracking things properly, they can go back and look at different sources of leads and say, okay, well, look, these 10 leads seem to be progressing really well. Oh, these have come from Google. Again, real-time insights that allow them to kind of understand, where to spend budget and all of those different things as well. And then the flip side to that, sorry, mate, is marketing to sales handoff, right? So again, rather than, okay, marketing generating leads and then, sending an email to sales saying, hey, we've got some interest here, it's come from the website, or sending it to a sales director who's typically busy, but then when he finds time or she finds time, that gets fed into to the salesperson. Well, again, we can bypass all of that kind of nonsense. And again, leads get generated, and then within a split second, they get given to the salesperson via a CRM, and bang, right, the sales process can start.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that possibly or historically, there's a reluctance to, from a sales perspective, sometimes to embrace, let's say, a CRM or some element of tracking, because I think the vision has been skewed. So from a sales professional perspective, it's monitoring, it's seeing what I'm up to. These are my leads, or I'm prospecting here or whatever, and I think you almost kind of need to release those chains and talk about visibility and the fact that by having true transparency and visibility on what's happening from a lead source or prospecting perspective, gives you the opportunity to make more informed decisions, right? So and ultimately, actually, it helps you, it aids you, it doesn't hinder you. It's not an element of Big Brother. It's essentially, we're all in this together, and I need to know what's happening with this particular lead or this prospect, because I spent X amount of dirhams or X amount of dollars for you to have a conversation. So I need to make sure that I'm not wasting your time or anything. So I think the positioning of that has to be very much back to the alignment, back to the strategy. This has to all hum. A bit like a kind of an engine. One part that's kind of just rattling a bit doesn't work, right? It needs to be all humming along.
Look, salespeople are always under pressure, right? And I think that's a thing. But there's a difference between pressure and a difference between feeling threatened, right? There's two different things. And I think your salesperson who feels threatened, and if I don't bring in my sales numbers, am I going to have a job? I think is going to react very differently to someone who isn't feeling threatened, but just feels pressure, right? Because
they're going to perform better, right? If they're threatened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I will say that I did go into an organisation here, and somebody, the sales director at the time, not me, was shaking a see-through bag of passports, and it was basically, okay, who wants to go home? Who wants to go home this month? Top prize for least amount of sales gets to go home, free trip to their home country. So works, right? Threats work.
Wow, amazing. So
sorry, you were saying
the point is exactly that. Look, you've got to, different ways of kind of managing people produce different reactions, right? And
exactly.
And it's exactly what you were trying to say. But we've but I think that's the key, right? If you, it has to be explained. Again, we've seen organizations where they've thrown a CRM, right? And they've literally said, right, guys, here's a CRM, and from tomorrow this is what you do, and if you don't do it, you're in trouble. And that's not going to work, right? Unless people are kind of mentally invested into this and understand why they need to do it, they're not going to do it. Exactly. So I think that, so look, I think for me, top of funnel, it's very much about get that in place, and then and then we move on to, I guess, the next part of the funnel, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of prospecting piece, once we know we're kind of all aligned, I mean, lead generation as it sits, or prospecting, let's call it just prospecting, You know, I think considering where we are and moving into 2021, there are some considerations that we have to be made now. You know, there are things like, you know, we put it already, but there's more applied pressure because there's essentially more eyeballs on you, right? You know, there's limited budget, so what they're trying to provide to you in sales may be limited as well due to the budget. But ultimately, there's still may not be an alignment with limited budget, limited opportunity, but expectation on delivery. So looking at, you know, that is a challenge. And also I think just about the way that people do prospect. So, you know, there's still in large parts of the world, you know, pound in the streets, right? Premise-based sales. Yeah. You know, it's not always practical to be sitting remotely. You sometimes have to go into, like, you know, a shipyard or, you know, construction site, or go in and have conversations, or office-based activity. This is, you know, dropped off a cliff, right? You know, people are actively, again, being discouraged from, you know, socially interacting, either in a social or work sense. So even that whole kind of opportunity to go prospecting, there's kind of a lean on other things, right? Lean perhaps more on a reliance of, you know, the digital aspect, because I can't go and physically knock on doors. I mean, I still remember 20 years ago, first sales job in this part of the world, walking around, you know, a Cobar, knocking on doors, selling software, selling internet solutions, you know, just being able to do that. And although that was 20 years ago, up until March, there was still people doing that, right? And we know. Why do we know? Because we've had companies that have come to us and said, I can't do this anymore, right? What's open to me? So I think, you know, there is limited sales opportunities, so we have to kind of look at some of those different ones. I mean, how do you think it? You know, do you think it's changed the way that? So that's prospecting, but do you think that it's changed the way people are trying to look for help? You know, the kind of potential buyers.
Yeah, I do. Look, I think there's a couple of things, and these aren't new things, but typically happen at times of recession.
Yeah.
People don't take risks, and I think that's a really kind of important one, I think.
Yeah.
So I've spoken to companies and I've said, look, you know, think about the purchasing decisions that you've made, you know, in the last 7 or 8 months now, since we've been sort of, you know, locked down and COVID and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What have you done? And they've been like, well, we've been much more cautious because we've had less money to spend.
Yeah.
We can't take risks. So this, you know, the risk of us spending money but making a purchase, making an investment, and it not working is something that we can't afford to do right now.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is, the way people are kind of searching for suppliers now, you know, they're looking for you know, credible suppliers, trusted suppliers. You know, for example, I mean, Facebook groups. You know, I'm a part of, you know, many, as I'm sure you are. But the amount of people that are asking for referrals, when, you know, that could have maybe, you know, just been an outbound call into them or something along those lines. But people are actually now saying, look, you know, I'm thinking of working with this company, or I'm looking for this product or service, and they almost want to kind of hear firsthand someone who's either worked with them, you know, someone that's, like I said, trusted in the industry, someone who's credible, someone who's sitting at the top of Google, someone who's got a lot of reviews. I mean, it could be all of these things, right? Where people are now maybe more conscious of things like that as opposed to price, right? Which I think is, you know, which kind of sounds contradictory in terms of where we are right now from a business perspective, where perhaps there's less budget. But I genuinely feel, and again, everyone I speak to in the B2B world who's making purchasing decisions, price is obviously a factor, but actually messing up by choosing the wrong supplier is something that they all try and avoid, right? And perhaps going with a cheaper supplier, you know, isn't the option right now.
Yeah, and look, the challenges.
I said to one guy last week, I was like, well, why? And he says, well, if I take a risk on a supplier, am I just risking my job?
Yeah,
Why would I do
Yeah,
that?
very true. Yeah, and I think also, the fact is now that the challenge is, as we kind of continue in this time, that organizations, are failing. Organizations are, sadly kind of closing down and closing up shop, and these are some of the considerations that ultimately pop into people's head now. So, how long you've been, how long you've been in business, what are some of your kind of existing contracts you have in place? How have you changed? All of these questions that perhaps were well, actually even not asked in a sales kind of call. You've now got to be prepared, as a sales professional to answer those. You've got to go after, perhaps more about that credibility play, more about the kind of understanding of the unique requirement for that particular customer, how things have changed versus just going in and, potentially kind of lowballing or talking price, which obviously can sometimes be an easier route. But yeah, I think it's important. I think that with that, going back to that kind of digital presence, I think that not only does the organization have to have a strong digital presence, but I think the individual has to have a strong digital presence now as well.
Yeah,
Because they're when we lose that connection and obviously the kind of relationship selling, or the build of trust with someone, when you perhaps meet them face to face, shake their hand, look them in the eye. A lot of the time now, that first point, and we'll get into it, but the first point of contact is a Zoom call. No camera from their side. You kind of can't see anything. You don't understand what's happening. So you've got to build an element of trust prior to that engagement. So I think building a strong digital presence as a sales professional is going to help you ultimately and your organization as well, because then it's matched, right?
yeah. And look, that's a really good point actually, because I think look, we've spoken about this, right, from a LinkedIn perspective, certainly.
Yeah.
Where social selling now is, I think, is a really kind of important
Yeah.
and key ingredient, because, and especially like again, it's still a lot of people who have little cartoony profile pics and all. I don't know. There's if it works for you, great. But we spoke last week about how a lot of my friends are spending much more time on
Yeah.
LinkedIn
On LinkedIn.
than they were pre-COVID, right? So and they were saying, look, literally, I spend most of my time on Instagram, and now
Yeah.
all that time's gone into LinkedIn, and maybe once or twice a week I look at Instagram. But 80% of their social time is now on LinkedIn. And so if you're not present as a salesperson, I think you're missing the trick. And I think it's not just about being present, right? Because again, I went through a better deal of my kind of LinkedIn messages kind of phase last night. And I hated it. It was literally, and I hadn't done it for a week. Normally I try and do it every day.
Right.
But I hadn't done it for a week, and I had 140 messages on LinkedIn, and it was just painful. And I think I checked the first 30, and in the end I was just like, you know what, if it's important, they'll message me again.
Amazing.
Because, so there's a difference
But
between
hard
being
sales pitch,
visible.
right? Connect,
Yeah,
fast pace.
everything was sales, right?
Yeah.
Or kind of job hunting, which I understand as well. But I think the key is you've got to still add value. If you're present on these platforms, share knowledge, share insight, share data, share articles. We've said in the past, if you're going to share articles, share your own articles, right? Position yourself as a thought leader, someone who knows what you're talking about. If not, share your own company's content. And if that's a miss, then look at industry content. But it's not very difficult to start to position yourself as someone who can be trusted, that is visible, that isn't afraid to share, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. You do need to do it. And look, social selling is one of those elements that is opening up. I think some people have been doing it very well, but I'd say when I look at inbound, for example, 3-4 years ago, there was one session on social selling, right? This year, I attended 4 sessions on social selling alone. So there's definitely a hive of activity as far as that outbound activity, but also just the fact that people again are going to be searching online, so you need to make sure you're present for sure. But I guess that kind of brings us nicely into the next stage as far as that. Great, got an inquiry, got a prospect, and kind of that kind of next reach phase or reach out phase.
Sure.
you know, in engaging with that prospect, right? I guess that kind of brings us down to that. I mean, I'll start with this. I mean, I think some of the things now that there's been some plus and minuses for current situation. I think also heading into 2021. I think on the plus side, the lack of physical meetings has meant time management has improved dramatically. We spoke about this, I think, last week or the week before, where, you know, the value of our own time has increased dramatically. So the fact that you're not driving somewhere, jumping in a car and kind of heading out to a customer. You know, I know I can see someone watching from the UK, Carl. I know he spends a lot of time on the road, or did spend a lot of time on the road, you know, where he was traveling between kind of appointments and clients. You know, how is he using that time now as far as you know, kind of engaging with other prospects potentially, or treating customers from there. I mean, I think that's first and foremost the opportunity to have more credible, you know, connections. I think is something that I've noticed straight away. You know, where you do have the ability to look, if you want rack 'em and stack 'em. I think your record is 11 or 12 as far as Zoom meetings in a day. I'm not. I think the early days we were both doing that. I think Zoom fatigue kicks in a bit, and I don't know if we champion that too much nowadays. But just, you know, the ability to at least not burn through time. You know, 20 minutes between meetings and that, and also time management when it comes to the actual meeting itself. But yeah, I mean, as far as kind of, you know, that initial inquiry, what do you think has changed? You know, when somebody first reaches out, what's different now?
Well, I think the key right now is still look, you just got to have your processes in place, right? First and foremost.
Yeah.
So what we have at Nexa is, you know, we have someone whose dedicated role is to deal with leads as they come in. So we have a lot of kind of inbound leads that come in on a daily basis. But the key right now, and again, you know, most of these people are going to go through some level of research. They're going to identify maybe 3 or 4 companies they don't want to contact, and time and speed is still really important. So the faster you are to kind of jump onto that lead as it comes in, engage with them, you know, call them, whatever it is, whatever that internal process is, I think you still have a much better chance of doing that. Now that becomes more difficult when people aren't in their offices, right? So again, from a kind of digital perspective, you've got to make sure that you've got systems in place so that, you know, someone is receiving these leads and in a position to react as they come in. But I think there's 2 parts of this, and you know, the reason we have somebody whose job it is to look after leads is because we have a lot of leads that come in.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you didn't have those that many leads, or you only had maybe 1 a day or a few a week, I think your processes and the way you deal with this is very different. So the way that, you know, I guess we would have to look at this is from a lead quality and a prioritization perspective. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you prioritize leads? And sometimes that's difficult because all you get is a name, an email address, maybe the company, and then you get maybe a short message, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you differentiate one of those with another one of those, or another 10 of those? And again, if you have many leads that come in, you've got to be a bit more, you've got to use more intelligent tools to understand that. So look, what we do is we use our CRM and we use lead scoring. So every lead that comes in, we've got a good idea. Well, not good idea. We know the exact idea of how many pages they visited on our website. You know, have they engaged with any of our ebooks? Have they engaged with any of our content in the form of blogs? How much research and time have they invested in Nexa before they've contacted us? And if we have an idea of that, and we see that someone's gone through a lot of effort, they automatically go to the top of the list, right? So these guys get contacted, we give them a lot more focus and priority, compared to that one person who's landed on the homepage, within 5 seconds gone to contact us, filled out a form and then left. We know that person's not invested in this process, has probably done the same to 5 or 10 other websites.
Yeah, exactly.
Their companies, and so why should we bother with them, right? And we will bother with them, but maybe when we've got time, as opposed to, you know, maybe jumping straight on it. So I think, and then the other way I'd look at it is, how do you differentiate between inbound and outbound leads? So The reason we focus so much on inbound is because generally when someone's coming to you saying, I want something, it's typically more, just stronger from a sales perspective than when we're going to someone trying to convince them to buy something.
Exactly.
Right. So we treat both of those very differently as well. But I guess just to go on just on our process, Andrew, and I think it'd be good for you to kind of carry on with this. But once we've figured out, okay, this is the right person, they're qualified. We don't want to waste our sales time or any of our colleagues' sales time by giving them leads which they're who are not engaged with us. But once we kind of go through that process, what we do is then typically have a call set up, right? Yep. And then I guess what do you do next, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think obviously ultimately to that pitch, right? So I think heading into kind of 2021 here, the pitch is very different. Being that kind of sales professional, you spend years picking up on nuances, picking up on visual triggers. So when you actually go and meet somebody, you do pick up on the office, perhaps the cars that are parked in the car park, where it is geographically, the individuals you're meeting, around the room, reading eye contact, shaking hands, etc. And the challenge is that obviously from a Zoom or Teams, whatever perspective, all of that kind of that I guess that comfort blanket is taken away, right, completely. So straight to jumping onto that first point, all of our meetings are discovery meetings, the very first meeting. So we don't actually present anything. We moved away from presenting a pitch or a deck about 2 years ago. So I guess we were better suited to kind of moving into COVID times as far as sales. So we have a discovery session. It's and even if someone says, hey, listen, what do you got to present? Nothing. We kind of want to understand a bit more about you as a business, understand what some of the pain points are, challenges, and then really kind of then see if we can help align our services with some of your pain points and requirements. So I think we have a camera on policy at our organization, and I think that's important to connect with someone because we've lost all of those other visual triggers. We actively encourage, joke, with the prospect to have their camera on as well. And obviously that can go a couple of different ways, but I can definitely tell you that even in the last 2 days, the calls that you have a camera on, you're engaged, you're talking, you can see people. There's more you can gain from that. And I think from both sides, right? Not only a feeling of a prospect, but also the prospect kind of feeling you out as an individual in the organization. I think there's definitely a two-way from there. So we'd say, kind of avoid avoid those decks and running into that. Also, the pitch itself does seem to be more business focused. So whereas perhaps if you're meeting someone, having a coffee with them, you might chit chat for 10, 15 minutes. I've noticed that obviously in a Zoom environment, it's pretty much straight to business. There is a bit of chat and a bit of banter, but obviously then it's pretty, straight down. Let's crack on.
Yeah. So look, I think the a couple of interesting points. I think the first one is relationships. You touched on that before. We do with cameras on. You've definitely got a chance to build a relationship again, right?
Yeah.
When cameras are off, I think that's very, very limited. And so companies, and I've been having conversations with companies who are trying to sell to us, and just in the last couple of weeks, again, I've had people who literally it's maybe a 2-minute hi, how's it going? Where are you? And the next thing is, right, I've got a deck, and they pull up a deck, and you've lost that. Now the ability's gone to kind of build that relationship because you can't look at both things now, right? It's weird. You don't not really got eye contact, but you do when it's video to video. But the second the presentation screen's up and it's on full screen,
you're gone.
And so I kind of, again, I think look, people do have to use presentations and PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. Delay it, honestly. Like I would say, and I'd say to our guys, delay it until you get to that point where you're maybe, I don't know, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way down that funnel, right? Where you've established that relationship, there's trust there, there's there's credibility there.
Yeah.
Now they want to see some details. Great. Now let's show them a deck. But up until that point, not. And I think that just the last point, I think when you're mentioning the difficulty with calls, there's a lot of calls which don't have very clear next steps agreed at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a miss because all of a sudden 2 or 3 days down the line, both sides are trying to figure out, okay, how was that left?
Yeah, exactly.
So again, I think just be very kind of clear on that. That's those kind of digital sales elements.
Yeah, you need to make sure that that what those next steps are.
Yeah.
And also I think the thing is that when you are, if you do have a deck, one tip is just to, before you launch into it, say, listen guys, I want to make this interactive. Got any questions, jump in. And then also when you're going through that presentation, check in, just make sure the kind of people are still engaged, right? Because I've also found if you do go into a deck presentation, cameras go off, and kind of it's almost, I liken it to a previous physical meeting where somebody will get their phone out. Yeah. And you're trying to talk to them and they're on their phone and they're checking their WhatsApp and and you've lost them, right? So I think just as a tip, try to make that as interactive as you can. Yeah.
Cool. So look, Andrew, let's move on just in the interest of time. Yeah. So we've got, okay, so look, we have a good meeting, we have a good call. The next part now is we've identified an opportunity, okay? And perhaps that agreed next step is that we'll send a proposal, okay? Yeah. What do we do with proposals nowadays? So how do we kind of take a fresh look on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to realize what happened previously, and obviously we've been tweaking our proposals and we've been going to market for years. But I think that there was a habit of people printing out proposals. So you got a proposal, printed it out, big and chunky, clipped it with a stapler, and then ultimately shared it with someone, right? So hey, listen, got this proposal, got this, got that. I guess at the moment, not everyone is back at work. So does that proposal get shared anymore? Probably less than it did previously. So we need to kind of be thinking about digital proposals, right? And by digital proposal, that isn't a PDF, right? Just because it's, it lives in digital space doesn't necessarily mean that it's digital, right? Yeah. So I think the thing is we have to consider, more interactive proposals, use visual aids to entice people or to excite them, and it may sound very quirky, I guess, if you're talking about pipe coatings and how exciting can it be, but use infographics, use visually led information to make sure that there is some interest, even video as well. And potentially even look at video proposals, right? So even though some of our proposals have been static, you and I have both done this, and the guys have done this, where we've used Vidyard or 23 or BombBomb, which is another one, where you can do a little video of yourself, take people through the proposal, so they don't have to print it out and kind of underline it and get the highlights right. You can take them through that proposal and ultimately send a video email as well. So you're kind of continually engaged, so they do remember that individual, that met with them on Zoom 5 days ago. Oh yeah, okay, this is Emma, I remember, right, cool, yeah, it looks like Blake Carrington, I remember. So these things, like these are the things that are great to use now, more so than ever. So we see a much higher engagement. And back to tracking, obviously with digital proposals and video, you have the ability to track, right? And see again where to focus your efforts and your energies.
Yeah. Cool. And I think that's really kind of key. Okay, cool. So proposal goes out.
Yeah.
And now someone really interested, they kind of looked at the proposal, they've watched your video explanation of a proposal, all that kind of cool stuff. But they go quiet. So they start ghosting you now, right? So not replying to emails.
We love a ghosting, right?
Right. So, they're not replying to emails, not answering your calls. What do you do next?
Yeah, I think, again, you look at lining up some sequences. So I think here, there's an opportunity at a very basic level if you have no other technology in place, you can use the likes of kind of Drift. You can use even Gmail to, a very basic sequence that can go out, right? So you can time delay an email by a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month even, and just drop that in. Now, obviously, if you have something like a HubSpot and a kind of proper CRM, you are able to sequence some of those emails, and depending on how they react and how they open them, you can drip feed them those sequences. But at a very base level, through Office 365 or Gmail, you do have the ability to do some automated kind of follow-ups, right? Where you're not kind of wasting your time chasing your tail, chasing someone. We talk about it a lot of the time, in this part of the world, in the Middle East, where we are currently, no one likes to say no. It's really difficult to get a no answer, really difficult. So you don't want to waste your time chasing your tail, for sure.
Yeah, and that last email, just make sure you kind of have a breakup email at the end of it.
Definitely.
And say, look, I won't be contacting you. You're not interested. Obviously, say it in a nice way, but it's always surprising how many kind of people wake up as soon as they receive that last kind of email, having ignored 5 previous ones. But
panic.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So okay, so that doesn't happen. We're all good. Someone is, seen a proposal, they're engaged now, and they come back and they kind of start to negotiate. Right. Yeah. What do we do? What do we do in negotiation in these times?
Yeah, I think it goes back to an earlier point that you said that, we don't, and look, just on experience at the moment, the conversation isn't necessarily focused on discounting, right? So negotiation is not necessarily a pure straight line item, discount 10%, right? You can't treat it like this, and I think also you can't treat it like you're down the souk or the market trying to haggle for a watch. So we have to kind of realize, if we go back to the point that organizations now are looking for credibility, they're looking for value. So how does that value offer itself, right? And I think that's the positioning. I think it's a value add approach, because remember, they're risk averse, right? So it's more value or perceived value as opposed to just flat discounting through negotiation.
Yeah. So look, the important points here, I think you touched on everything really, is look, if people don't want to take a risk and go with a cheaper supplier, that gives you a position of strength, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So and remind them of that, so especially if you do have a great track record, you've got credibility, you've got experience, tell them, why would you take a risk? Why would you take a risk? And you want the 18 to work on this. Why even risk your own job? I think you'd be as bold as that. I think the second thing, the value add, is really important. But again, I think because everyone's looking for a discount, because people kind of they're being asked, did you ask for a discount? So people are asking the question. I think, and again, this surprises me when I speak to people, is when you're giving a discount, you're always giving a discount off that final sales price, right? So if if you're selling something for $20,000, and someone says, look, I need a discount, I need 10%, fine, you're taking off $2,000, but that $2,000 is coming straight off your bottom line, right? That's coming out of your profit. And so the challenge is if you're only making 3,000 from that deal in the first place, a 2,000 discount means that you're giving them a 66% discount, right? So kind of figure that out, right? Now it means to make the same profit, you're going to have to sell 3 times as many of those products, right? So now you've got to sell 60 grand's worth to get the same profit. Do the numbers, and again, make sure that there's kind of a process there for discounting, because I think the second you get caught down, or the second you go down that path, I think that presents like enormous margin problems. And then you could start really kind of, creating something even bigger than what it really is. So look, so I think bottom line on that is be careful and don't kind of negotiate if you don't need to. Don't do gesture discounts, because I've seen some of that flying around. That look, it's tough, so we'll give you 5%.
No.
Why?
Don't get involved in that.
And so so they're happy. They say, right, Andrew, contracts, agreements. I think we're all used to seeing digital signatures or digital contracts, and
Yeah,
signing
exactly.
things digitally now. So again, if you're not doing that, don't overcomplicate the sales process. Get that in place, I guess, right?
Yeah, just make it
Anything else that's
easier,
up?
and it's obviously again fully trackable. So
Yeah,
if you look at a DocuSign or any other kind of digital process for signatures, it's very straightforward now. Just to kind of drop in and get those approved
yeah,
and get things rocking and rolling.
yeah. We've got a few more minutes, Andrew, and I think we've got to that point, obviously bottom of the funnel now, where
Yeah,
contracts have been signed, we're all happy.
sales job is done, right?
Sales,
Drop the
yeah.
mic,
Look,
run
and it's
away.
funny because we've obviously had lots of conversations about this in the past as well. But I think the key now, again, let's look at 2021. Let's look at the challenges that
Yeah,
people are going to face. Look, that old quote always gets thrown around. When we're talking about customer retention and upselling,
yeah,
but it's cheaper to sell more to an existing client than it is to get a new one, right?
yeah,
And I think again that's something that companies need to really kind of understand. That look, keep your clients happy, and they're
yeah,
going to buy more things from you, and they're probably going to spend more money with you, right?
yeah, yeah,
And from a sales perspective, brilliant. Okay, that's what we want, because that means we don't have to sell as hard because we've got someone who
yeah,
trusts us. Chances are, we've got an opportunity to put the price up as opposed to start negotiating again because they've seen some results or some impact or whatever it is. But I think one of the important things is these kind of handoffs, right? So, when
yeah,
we kind of, I think for sales people to continue to sell to existing clients, I think you said it perfectly, right? Sales job's done as soon as the contract's in place, move on to the next one. Well,
yeah,
actually, I think now in 2021 and new normal and all of that stuff, I think it comes down to actually how much involvement does that salesperson have from an operational standpoint moving
yeah,
forward,
yeah,
right? How often they're checking in, right? With that client and saying, hey, I know you're being looked after by someone else now,
yeah,
someone from my ops team, but how are you getting on? Is there anything I can
yeah,
help you with? I think things like that go a hell of a long way, right? And will kind of aid
yeah.
retention and upselling moving on, right?
Yeah, I think we obviously spoke about it at the beginning of top of funnel with alignment with sales and marketing. I think sales and operations need to be fully aligned at the bottom. So, just
Right.
because you now have this customer, you can't take it as a given. You need to nurture them. And also, I think just if you did previously have the ability to potentially go and visit that customer, grab a coffee with them, grab a beer, that's been taken away.
Yeah.
So I think there's a consideration now that you can reach out, and also for the people that have always remotely sold, this applies for the same reasons. You need to make sure that that customer is being taken care of.
Yeah.
You've obviously worked incredibly hard to bring them to the table, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting fed now, so you've got to make sure that obviously they continue to be happy, and I think that's crucial. So definitely kind of make it a priority. As far as making sure that customer is happy on what you sold them essentially as
Yeah.
well.
Look, and I think it's interesting because I think sales and marketing alignment have been, it's a buzz term, right? It's a lot of people, we've been talking about it for the
Yeah,
last few years.
yeah,
Um, you go to big conferences and there's a whole load of people who are kind of, really kind of addressing this and talking about it and try and get
yeah,
people to understand the importance of it. Sales and operational alignment, I think, is actually maybe just as big. And especially, I
yeah,
think, moving into 21,
100%,
where
definitely.
actually you're going to need to really understand exactly what's going on for a client, how happy they are. Do you need to step in because, hey, you are the guy that sold it, even though if something's messed up, it's not down to
Yeah,
you. But
yeah,
you're, a salesperson is in that key position where they can really kind of smooth things over, get involved, show that they care. And I think people will want to continue working with people like that. And I think,
yeah,
I think key takeaway today potentially is that kind of sales and operational alignment is maybe just as important, if not more important,
yeah,
than sales and marketing alignment. So I think that's
yeah,
cool. Andrew, we've had a question. Thanks, Michael, for sending this through. But so Michael said, look, in terms of what are the kind of risks of selling too cheaply in the current environment?
yeah.
Um, the risk of appearing too cheap as well.
Mm.
Um, this is something that, again, I think really goes back to that risk element from purchasing at the moment. There's a lot of companies who are going to fail, okay, and a lot of companies who are going to close down. A lot of them are going to close down through no fault of their own, right? But I always go back to, I'm trying to think, do you remember the airline? Was it Silverjet, Andrew? Do you remember Silverjet? Back many moons ago, right? Okay,
yes.
Right. This was a business class only airline. Okay,
that's right.
That was operating from Dubai to one of the London airports.
Yeah, okay. I remember. Yeah,
and it was a very kind of innovative. So no economy on there. You're flying from the private terminal here in Dubai, landing at the Royal Terminal. So a lot of kind of benefits and a lot of kind of prestige associated to flying with those guys. Then one day, and people were flying it, having a great experience. And then one day they had a buy one get one free offer, and it went nuts, right? To be honest with you, I don't think the tickets were overly expensive anyway. They were certainly cheaper than what you'd pay on an Emirates, for example.
Yeah.
But they had a buy one free, get one free offer. So all of these people who are frequent travelers were suddenly buying these, 2 business class tickets for the price of 1. And the next day they closed down. So, right. And literally this was the last kind of ditch attempt to generate some cash, generate some revenue before they filed for bankruptcy. Yeah. And for me right now, and that all, we haven't spoken about this probably since it happened, I guess, right? And we're talking over 10 years ago. Right?
Must be. Yeah.
And you kind of, anytime an offer or a deal just seems too good, it probably is too good to be true, right? And I always kind of think back to this. Airlines have done this a lot. Even if you think of some of the airlines that have closed down the last couple of years, they've had pretty good sales on just before they're about to close. So if you are speaking to somebody, or if you're selling a product, and if you are coming across as that company that's a little bit too desperate to do a deal, that's kind of fraught with danger. I think it's just something that you don't really want to do as a seller.
I also think it attracts the wrong type of customer as well.
Right.
So you've got to consider that the fact is that if they're all through we've spoken about, and if you've got a customer that their only deciding factor through everything going around at the moment, the craziness, is price. Not sure if that's really the individual that you want in your stable, right?
No, exactly. And again, it also comes back to not understanding numbers as well, right? Because again, if you are going in at a kind of ridiculously cheap price, which again seems too good to be true, maybe someone's just not really thought about the numbers and had, maybe decided a 20, 30 or 40% discount is the right way to go, without really kind of, realizing the impact of that on profitability.
Yeah.
I
think we see it as well. Some of these deals that do seem too good to be true are, they're bait. They're just bait. So, when you start to work with that organization, suddenly costs start piling up. Oh, well, this wasn't considered as part of the scope. Oh, well, this wasn't. So, so actually you end up spending more anyway, right?
Yeah.
So definitely shy away from that discount. It's a fire sale. It's a deal. It's a steal. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think on that note, mate, it's 6 minutes past, so we're a little bit over time. Guys, thank you for kind of tuning in and watching. Thank you to those who will be listening to us on the podcast kind of after the event. I've enjoyed that. I think it's good. It's been a good topic.
Yeah, don't turn too surprised about it. Yeah.
I did say I didn't say I was super excited at the start.
You didn't say you were super excited today, so I guess people get confused. No, it's good, and it goes without saying. We're talking sales, so that's why we overran. So tune in next week, guys, or listen in next week for the kind of third part of the series. We're talking people. So people in 2021, how does that look? And then the last week will be tech. Tech in 2021 as part of this 2021 series. So yeah, thank you for tuning in today. As always, you can reach out to myself and Amit. We're on LinkedIn. Don't sell to Amit because he's not going to read your message. But if you do send it, he told you 3 or 4 times, you'll pop to the top of his inbox. So you might be able to get hold of him. As we said, you can reach out growth show at digitalnexa.com. But yeah, we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Awesome. Take care, Andrew.
See you later.
See you guys.
Thanks. Take care. Cheers. Bye.